Hey, if you're pregnant over 40, I have just the community for you. It's a private community away from Facebook where women just like you come together to meet and support one another during pregnancy. To sign up for the waitlist, go to over40fabulousandpregnant.com/waitlist and be the first to know when the membership is open. I can't wait to see you inside. Welcome to Over 40 Fabulous and Pregnant. I am your host, Jamie Massey, and you're listening to episode 33. If you are looking for pregnancy stories of women over 40, you've come to the right place. Today on the show, we have Caryn from South Carolina, who is a mother of 3 and a fertility coach. She is coming on to share her pregnancy story at 42. This is an incredible journey through struggle, loss, and in the end, 3 beautiful children. Caryn does go into her motherhood journey where it all started, conceiving her first child with IVF. She said it was easy and assumed having every other child after that would be the same. Her second was a twin pregnancy, and I had no idea it was possible to birth them 3 weeks apart. Incredible. She also explains how she had a missed miscarriage. Like, is that possible? Apparently it is. And she also includes really good fertility tips if you're trying to conceive. When I first started this podcast, I worried I would get a boring pregnancy story. And that's kind of the cool thing, is none of these pregnancies are ever boring. They all have their own unique struggles and successes. And I just think that is so amazing. But let's get straight into Caryn's pregnancy story at 42. Caryn, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here and share my story.
Yeah, and before we do that, will you share a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. So I am Caryn Rich, and I am a wife and mother and fertility coach. And I live in South Carolina. I'm originally from New York, and we moved down here about 6 years ago, and loving the warmer weather. We have 3 kids, although we had 4. We'll get to that in my story a little bit later. But my oldest is 16 and a half. We're looking at colleges, which I can't believe. My middle is 11, and my youngest is 8. And, just some fun facts. I used to work in the fashion industry for many, many years, traveled abroad, had a really fun life before I decided to switch directions once I became a mama.
Let's go back whenever you were 42 and how you got pregnant.
I can't tell you my story about getting pregnant at 42 until I tell you what had happened before, because by no means was any of my fertility journey easy. So in order to understand what happened at 42, you need to understand everything that happened before that. So as I mentioned, I worked in the fashion industry, and I was one of those people who thought, like many of your listeners, once you try to get pregnant, no matter what your age, you're going to get pregnant. That didn't happen for us. So we needed to seek fertility treatment, and we were very lucky because our first round IVF is my almost 17-year-old, and it was so easy. I thought it was going to be easy for subsequent pregnancies. Well, wasn't so. And for our second pregnancy, to have our second baby, took us 5 years, 17 fertility cycles, and 5 miscarriages for me to finally get pregnant at 39 with twins.
Wow.
So, it was one of those things. I was like, okay, I couldn't understand why all of those bad things happened. But then I was like, okay, I can rationalize it because I got pregnant with twins. Like, I didn't know what the sexes of any of my babies are. I am a firm believer that there are so few surprises in life that I never wanted to find out. Unfortunately, something went wrong in my pregnancy. It wasn't the baby. And unfortunately, I wound up having early delivery, very early delivery for second trimester delivery for both of my children, for both of my twins. One was born at 20 weeks and one was born at 23 weeks, which is very unusual with a twin pregnancy to have a separation in there when they were born, like they're called an interval delivery. My 20-week-old, my second son, unfortunately, was too young to make it, but my 23-weeker is my 11-year-old girl. She spent a very long time in the NICU, 135 days. And after all we had been through to get pregnant and have that happen, it was really, really tough. Now, I should say that she has special needs.
Wait, hold on. She was born at 23 weeks and survived?
Yes, ma'am. And she was one of 10 children in the United States that year to be born at 23 weeks to survive. Yes. Yes, ma'am.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah. So I want everybody to have hope, especially like when you get to that point in your pregnancy around 22 weeks, there is hope. There is hope. So just know that. I don't want anybody to give you, I will say that every single day they were telling me she wasn't going to make it. And I looked at them and I said, I already lost a child. I'm not losing another. And the doctors turned around and said to me, perhaps had she been born to another person, whatever, she may not have made it. But I willed that baby home. There was no way I was losing her. But I will say, you're not born at 23 weeks and scot-free. She has a whole host of medical issues, cognitive delays, things like that. But she's an amazing child who has taught me so much about this process, and I am so grateful to have her be mine. Needless to say, wow. After what we went through, financially, for those of us who've had to go through infertility treatments, it was a wreck. It was a wreckage. 17 cycles we paid for, 17. And we had these 3 frozen embryos, and I was not, how could we even do anything with those embryos, right? Like, we were done. Like, we had so many expenses. Our daughter had a lot of needs and a lot of time. I always wanted to have another child, but I knew that it was not something my husband was willing to broach. After everything we went through, I think he would have been happy with the one, but I did not feel complete. So we had these 3 frozen embryos, and my thyroid was kind of all over the place. So I had gone, I don't even think my husband knew, to be quite honest, to go talk to our fertility doctor about the embryos. And I was hoping that my husband would be okay with us just putting them in and seeing what happened, right? Like, not going through major effort, because I needed to be on all kinds of drugs to keep my pregnancies. I won't bore you with that, but, I needed to be on things in order to have a successful pregnancy, hence the 5 miscarriages. So I went to go see her, and I was complaining of some pain, and she had wanted to do an HSG. And for those of us who aren't familiar with that, but basically they want to just check, she wanted to check my cavity to see if I had any, a fibroid. It sounded like to her like I had a fibroid, I had some pain. And I happened to mention that I was tired and I wasn't feeling well. And she was like, you know what, Caryn, here, take this Synthroid and call me when your period comes. I was so wrapped up in everything that it somehow dawned on me that I didn't have my period. And I remember emailing my doctor, and I was like, I know. I was like, I just wanted you to know that my period didn't come yet. I know nothing's to come of it, and I know what protocol is, and you want to send me for blood work. So just send me the form. And I remember saying that day, I'm like, why can't you just do the HSG today? And she's like, Caryn, I don't do that until you get your period. I'm like, really? You don't think the ship has sailed at this point for a natural pregnancy? Like, really? She's like, go home. Well, I literally remember this. I remember where I was and what I was doing. I was changing my daughter in the Nordstrom's bathroom, and I got a phone call, and it was my doctor. And she says to me, hey, Caryn. I'm like, hey, how you doing? She's like, what are you doing this afternoon? I'm like, well, I'm in Nordstrom's right now changing Ollie and whatever. And she goes, how about you come in for a fetal ultrasound? I was like, Dr. C, that's for people who are pregnant. And she goes, I know. I'm like, what are you saying? She's like, I'm saying that you're very pregnant. And I was like, I don't believe you. Send me the HSG work. She goes, I knew you would say that. I did the same thing to make sure it was your blood work. She literally, were on the phone. She emails me the blood test results. And I mean, my HCG was like, psh. And going through infertility treatments, I'm used to like starting point of a 56 or whatever. I mean, it was in the thousands. So I was really pregnant. Mm-hmm. So I remember like panicking, and I remember I had to tell my mother-in-law, and I was like, I think I just told her I needed her to watch my other baby. I needed to go to the doctor. So I go to the doctor, and lo and behold, I think I was like 7 weeks pregnant.
Wow.
And I had thought back, like over the summer, I had missed, like my period was super duper late. And one of the drugs that I needed to be on once I was pregnant was a blood thinner, because I have an immune problem, immune condition. And I remember like, I was like, oh, I had some of those left over, and I was doing that, but then my period came. So clearly I probably had a missed miscarriage the month prior. And once she had put me on the Synthroid, and we went, and I was pregnant, and I was in shock. Wow. And I remember calling my husband, and I was like, babe, are you sitting down? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, I'm pregnant. He's like, whose is it? I'm like, what? I'm like, who do you think it is? And we were just both in shock for a very long time, because after everything that we had gone through, how could this happen? Like, and I forgot to mention, you want to hear the best part of the whole story? Not only was I 42, not only had I had 5 miscarriages, not only had we gone through 17 infertility treatments over an 8-year period, I only had 1 fallopian tube because I had had an ectopic pregnancy. So what the doctor explained to me, our bodies are miracles, that 1 tube can tip over to the other side, if that's the ovary that's ovulating, and take over for both sides. Like it was meant to be. And when I tell you, I'm not going to lie and say it was an easy pregnancy, because after everything that had happened with my twin pregnancy, it was very nerve-wracking. So getting the results that I was pregnant, I was nervous as all hell to get on the medications that I needed to be on. And then, of course, as luck would have it, I had a hematoma, which you never want to see blood coming out of that area when you're pregnant, which I did with my first, ironically not with my twin pregnancy. I was bleeding on and off for like 13 weeks. And I remember it was Thanksgiving, and we had to cancel because I had to be on bed rest because we didn't know what it was. And I was flipping out, and I just remember like, listen, you got to be calm. You didn't expect this. You just got to stay calm. And when I tell you that the high-risk doctor that I was seeing with my twin pregnancy told me that everything that happened to my children were my fault, that it was my body's fault, and that I should never, ever, ever carry another child, that I would never be able to do it. Do you know how those words were echoing through my brain, right?
Yeah.
So that man needs to eat dirt, and I did it. And not only did I do it, she was my longest pregnancy. I carried her to over 36 and a half weeks. I did have a cerclage, for those of you who are wondering, but I did it. And I was 42 with 1 fallopian tube. And I hope that, just hearing that brings some hope and falls on the ears of somebody who needs to hear that. The one thing I want to say is I love doctors, and we so need them, but they are not God. They are not whatever you believe in the universe. I do believe I mourn hundreds of embryos that we lost, but those babies were my babies. Even the one that was only with me for a short time were meant to be mine. And the baby that will come to you and all of us is meant to be ours in the right timing. And I don't mean to sound woo-woo, but I've seen it happen. Not only with myself, I see it all the time with my clients. Like, it is crazy how things work out the way they do. They work out how they're supposed to. And I am so grateful every day, especially when I hear stories, every day about what women are going through. I was in those trenches. I was in there. And somebody may stare at me and say, oh my God, you had a natural pregnancy. I've seen both sides of it, right? I've seen both sides of it. But it is so possible. And it really, really gets under my skin when I hear this term geriatric pregnancy. Every time I went to the doctor, geriatric pregnancy, AMA. Like, there are so many women. I mean, I'm working with a woman who's 50 right now, and she's going to have a baby. It's not like I really, there was this article that came out back in the day, and I reference it, and it had to have been about like 25, 30 years ago. It was in Time magazine saying, and that was when there was the discovery that your fertility, really falls off heavily, once you turn 30. And everybody started freaking out. Was it necessary to freak everybody out like that? No, yes, it's something necessary that we need to know. Knowledge is power. But same thing. Do we really need to start scaring everybody and having this negative attention? I think sometimes these doctors who are saying these mean things to us have never had fertility issues. Because if you did, you wouldn't speak to us in this unkind manner. I am so grateful. She was cleansing and healing in so many ways. And, to know, after my body failed me for so long and couldn't do what seamlessly everybody else could do on their own. And then even to defy the odds of the age and the one tube. If I can do it, I just want you to know, who's listening, you can do it too. I promise you.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah, I had an ectopic pregnancy too and had to have my tube removed. And I lost a lot of hope because of that. But it's totally possible.
Oh my God, it is so possible.
Well, let's go on to your pregnancy and tell us how that was.
So, as I mentioned, the beginning was a little rocky. Because I had to be on blood thinners, yet I had this hematoma. So it was like kind of you have to kind of deal with the clot, but I had to deal with this issue because I didn't want something to happen, to get in the way of the pregnancy. But I mean, overall, I loved it. Like I said, it was healing. It felt so good to know that, this pregnancy, was mine and, a surprise. And I could feel what it was like for other people to find out that they were pregnant. I enjoyed it. I mean, I really, really did. I mean, I was never really tiny. I mean, I'm a tiny person, but I gained massive amounts of weight with every pregnancy. I think partially because of the medication, partially I needed to be on progesterone shots just to be safe. And partially I was just nervous. It was really stressful. And there was a lot of PTSD that was coming out closer I got to delivering, and certainly once I did deliver, because she also wound up in the NICU for a very short period of time. But that was a very difficult situation. But overall, I loved it. I loved being able to see, my middle one become a big sister. And it was just, I was so happy. I didn't share with people unless they saw me, because it was one of those things where, I felt like I flaunted my twin pregnancy because I was so excited about it. And then look what happened. So unless you saw me, you didn't know I was pregnant. And then otherwise, friends and family who, didn't see me, they didn't know until I was about 30 weeks pregnant, because I just was, as I'm sure you can understand, I just wanted to keep it, to myself. And my twin pregnancy was an emergency. I was on an island. I needed to be transported via lifeboat. There was no MFM at the hospital. I needed to be taken by ambulance back to my hospital, hours away. So there was a lot of that I think I didn't process, because how can you process when you lost a child and you were still pregnant? Like, how do you process? So I prevented all the processing because I was still pregnant, and I didn't want to So I was very grateful. I was so grateful for this opportunity to cleanse that, negative experience, which is bittersweet, but.
Yeah. What was it like getting past 23 weeks?
Oh my God. That's such a great question. My daughter, the middle daughter, has a specialist in Florida, and my husband, as it may, I didn't look at weeks or else I wouldn't have had this happen, had to be in Florida for an appointment with her when I hit 23 weeks. Mm. And let me tell you, I was flipping out. It made me so nervous. But as I passed and I got to 24 and I got to 25 and I got to 26 and then I got to 32 into my, got way into my third trimester, every week counted and every week felt good. But it was hard. Yeah. It was really, really hard.
What were you thinking during those weeks?
Oh my God, I can't go through this again. I can't do this again. Even though I knew it wasn't, there were signs that my doctor ignored, like I was funneling. And I didn't have any of that because I was checked weekly. I had a cerclage. So I knew the baby was healthy because I had 3D ultrasounds every week. I mean, when you have something happen like that to you, you're watched, Definitely. Right? So I knew that, I was doing everything I could. I mean, the thing that got me through is I just needed to stay in the moment and I couldn't think ahead. I couldn't do that because it was futile, right? Yeah. So I just needed to stay in that moment and say, everything is okay right now. I just went to the doctor. But I think having that doctor who knew what he was doing, who was a lot more qualified than the other idiot who, blamed me for everything, he basically understood. And I needed those ultrasounds weekly. I needed to be seen weekly. I don't care that you don't want to see me. You're going to see me. Or maybe I saw him every 2 weeks and then weekly as I got, to a certain point. But when normally you go monthly and then you don't go weekly too much. I mean, I obviously had a much escalated schedule. I had a cerclage. When you have a cerclage that needs to be watched, you need to make sure because that can rupture and rip. And it's a miracle. Like, I really feel blessed.
Yeah. And did you find out the gender?
Nope. Never found out the gender with any of them. And in fact, when I went in to deliver my second son, my twin, the first twin, I remember asking the doctor, I was like, do you remember? I wanted to know at that moment if it was a boy or a girl, and he didn't remember. And then I didn't know what the other one was. I didn't want to know. Like, again, as I said, I just came from the school up. There are so few surprises in life. I didn't want to know what it was, and it didn't matter. And selfishly, like, I almost wanted it to be a boy because I had tremendous guilt that my son, who always wanted a brother, didn't ever get to experience that. And then when my daughter was born, she was a girl, and then she wound up in the NICU, I was like, I caught, that guilt, like that unnatural guilt. I mean, obviously I didn't cause her, because of course I love her and I wanted her. I had just wanted that so badly. And, he was 7 at the time. And I wanted him to have a brother. And I, to this day, feel sad about it. And, he's a teenager and we can talk about it, But obviously, again, going back to God gives you what you were meant to have. The fact that my special needs child has a sister is the best thing we ever could have done for her. Like, it's just modeling behavior and friendship. And so it turned out how it was. But no, I never found out what any of the sex of my children were.
Well, how did you have 3D scans and not see it?
Oh, because if they don't go in that area, you don't see it.
Okay.
Yeah. Like, obviously, the anatomy scan I turned away. Okay. And you know what? I have to tell you, sometimes in an anatomy scan, you think you see parts and they're not parts.
Yeah.
So, it's not a, and I had a friend, also about 15 years ago, literally the entire pregnancy, they were told they were having a girl. And 3 weeks before, the doctor looks at her and goes, I hope you didn't do a boy nursery. And they're like, of course we did. It was a girl. So.
Yeah.
You don't know.
I see those like gender reveals on Instagram, and then they have the opposite. I think it's hilarious.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow. Well, did you have any cravings or your normal pregnancy symptoms?
Oh my God, yes. Carbs. If you were a carb, you needed to get in my mouth now. bagels, bread, French fries. And my doctor was down by the shore. We were living in New Jersey at the time. And I'll never forget, it was around this time, March-ish, April. And it was St. Patrick's Day. And, oh God, my health coach would kill me for saying this now. But the Shamrock Shakes at McDonald's, I could have one of those a couple times a day.
Wow.
I mean, I didn't, but sometimes I did have them daily. I just craved anything. I'm a vegetarian, so I think also that manifests itself somehow in a pregnancy where I'm not having meat, having sweets and things like that. I'm a big sugar addict, but carbs and anything sweet like that. That was my jam.
Uh-huh. So let's get into your diet. What else did you eat normally?
I'm going to be honest with you. I don't think I ate. I think I looked at pregnancy as an opportunity after everything I had gone through to be a free agent and eat whatever I wanted. So I'm probably not the best person to ask this question. Now, on the other side of it, when I'm working with women getting pregnant, I know the right way to eat. And, probably, knowing what I know now for all of the immune issues I had, an anti-inflammatory diet is so important when you're trying to get pregnant, especially the older we get, because I do, as our bodies, start to age, and I'm not that 40 is ancient, but I'm just saying as our body starts to age, there are gut issues that come up, and a lot of the immune issues stem from the gut. So I'm a firm believer. The one thing I did do is drink a lot of water, because I knew, no matter what, I think a lot of pregnant women don't drink enough water. So thankfully I did that. But it's so important to drink a lot of water, because 9 out of 10 times those Braxton Hicks, come out of nowhere, and they can be caused by dehydration. And I think, if anybody is in the early stages of pregnancy or trying to get pregnant, get in the habit of drinking water now. Put electrolytes in it. Really important when we're trying to get pregnant, electrolytes and replenishing that, because that baby is taking everything from your body and it just doesn't care. It's not going to apologize. So you need to replenish that. And I think that sometimes we'll feel nauseous or dizzy or any of those things. Just putting in electrolytes is really important. Cutting back on grains, I think, can be really important. And I'm not saying I'm a very much 80-20% kind of gal. So 80% of the time, cut back on your grains, whether it be, pasta, bread, things like that. We live in a world where there are so many wonderful alternatives. I believe in keeping that inflammation low, because not only will it help to achieve a pregnancy, it will help keep the pregnancy as well. So, things like that. Avocado is so healthy for your baby's brain, whole fats, butter, all of those things. Don't be afraid of them. Those are not the enemy, contrary to what, they've told us in this world. I mean, we've been misled in terms of nutrition. Yeah. So don't be afraid of those things. Eat your eggs. If you're craving eggs, eat them. That's what your body needs. So.
That's good. What about products when you were pregnant? Was there anything that helped you? So
I would always take a prenatal that had a DHEA in it, and folic acid, for brain. I always felt that was super duper important. I relied, especially in the first trimester, on, they have lollipops and they have little sucking candies that help with the nausea. I forget what they're called, but those were in my box. Trader Joe's also makes these little ginger mints. Ginger is super soothing for your stomach when you're, not feeling well like that. Apple cider vinegar to gargle with was my go-to, because I think also because your immune system is getting suppressed, sometimes I hear a lot that, and I experienced it too, you get a sore throat, a red throat, and you don't want to take medication. Apple cider vinegar, you gargle with that a couple times, you're golden. Huh. And then getting pregnant, trying naturally, there's a product called Pre-Seed, right? And it was, don't drop it on the floor because you'll fall and slip. But it is a natural lubricant that can help carry the sperm to the egg when you're trying to get pregnant. So it's kind of got like that mucusy kind of feel to it. So those were like my favorite things that I always recommend to people. And and they still hold true to this day.
And how did you prepare for birth?
I'm not sure I did because, I was hoping, to have my cerclage out at a certain point and then wait and give birth. Well, you know how you make plans and, it doesn't happen that way. So not sure that I did. So I had a vaginal birth and then 2 vaginal births and then a C-section. And I felt strongly that I wanted to have a VBAC for this pregnancy. So I had prepared and gone through all of that information. And when you have a 23-weeker under normal circumstances, they need to do something called a classical C-section, where normally, the C-section goes this way. When they're that small, they have to go this way. And if I had that kind of C-section, I never would have been able to give birth vaginally because you can have a rupture.
Yeah. So for those that can't see that, she's saying a classic C-section goes horizontal, and you had one vertically.
No, I had the regular one. I think the classical is actually the vertical one, and then the bikini one is the horizontal one. So I had been able to have a bikini one, and this doctor was afraid, and he didn't believe me that I didn't have the other kind because of how young my daughter was. But we had discussed, I'll bring you the paperwork, all that stuff. So I brought him the paperwork. Everything was okay. Well, wouldn't you know it? I had been at the hospital because I was having contractions. They took out my cerclage in the hospital at 34 weeks. And then I went home. And then 2 days later, wound up back at the hospital. And of course, my doctor didn't have a partner. So of course he was away the weekend that I went into labor, and his partner refused to let me have a VBAC. So I had prepared to have a VBAC. I had packed my bag like I hadn't for the other 2. I didn't know either of the other 2 were happening. So I think I packed my bag like probably around 32 weeks. I got the pads I like. I got my nursing pajamas. I had bought like a really cool gown to wear in the hospital, like instead of the regular hospital gowns I had bought, they sold those really cool things. And, I'd prepared big sister and big brother gift baskets. So I had actually, for this one, I actually did prepare more than I did for the other 2 because they totally came out of nowhere. But again, you prepare and look what happens, because I wound up in the hospital overnight. I wasn't really dilating. I had to have a C-section the next day, and that was it.
And why did you go to the hospital?
Because I was having contractions.
Okay.
Yeah, I knew what contractions were. This is, my 4th child I was about to give birth to. I knew what contractions felt like. Like when you feel them, you know what they are.
Yeah. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So how was your recovery?
It wasn't bad. I mean, for a C-section, you're typically in the hospital for, 3 or 4 days. But as I mentioned, she wound up in the NICU. So literally right after we gave birth, and there was somebody having a C-section after us. And right after we gave birth, I was in, they did the C-section, took the baby away from me, didn't even get to hold her. Got to kiss her and see her, but I didn't even get to hold her. They took her right away. And here I am in the recovery room in the OR after a C-section. They bring this other woman in, and she's with her baby. And I just remember coming down from all the hormones and also just PTSD, screaming that I wanted to see my baby, screaming. How did this happen to me again? And, the only difference was I was awake. I wasn't awake for either of my twin pregnancies because of the proximity of what had happened. I just pushed myself because they wouldn't let me go see her in the NICU until I could stand up on my own. So I pushed myself to get up, even though I had an epidural. Like, you have to wait for that to wear off. So I couldn't see my daughter for hours. So you can only imagine how that impacted my recovery. On one end, I was in so much pain. Plus, my first C-section was awful because it's very painful when they cut through all of those nerves. The second C-section actually wasn't as bad. because they cut through the same nerves that are already have no, like I have zero feeling where my C-section was. So my motivation was, you want to see your baby, you're going to have to get up. So I don't even think you could even force me to get up that quickly after I had had my first C-section. But, this was a motivating factor. And then, going home without her, going home without my child again, not fun.
Well, how was it holding her for the first time?
It was amazing. It was scary because she did have, a problem that really needed to correction. And 2 days after she was born, she needed to have a major surgery. And it was a surprise. It wasn't anything that was seen on any of my 3D ultrasounds. It must have happened, really after I had stopped my blood thinners. And it was correctable. It wasn't a big deal, but it was scary because she had to have a spinal tap right after she was born. They had to set off all of these things, even though I had had genetic testing. And, my doctor at the time was like, I can't imagine anything. We didn't see this. Like, it was a very big surprise to have this happen to us. So it was really stressful. But holding her that first time and seeing her face, and she was my biggest child. Like, she weighed the most. I have those pictures, and in the pictures, you can see that I have tears in my eyes, but I'm smiling.
Yeah.
Because it was just a bittersweet moment. I remember right before I was sitting in the wheelchair waiting to go into the OR to give birth to her. And I just remember having a sad moment thinking, this is the last time I'm going to have life growing inside of me. It's the last time. Like, I loved in the middle of the night when I would get up to go to the bathroom, and then I would go to lie down and that baby would kick and I would talk to it and I would see, like, there's nothing more beautiful than connecting with something that's growing inside of you. Like, that's our superpower, ladies. We are incredible. We can grow another human being. Men can't do that. Sorry. Don't mean to offend anyone. But, that is our superpower. That is what we were God-given gift, to those of us who have ovaries and a uterus. Right. It is a superpower.
I love that. So she was in the hospital over 130 days?
My first daughter, my twin, was in 135 days. This daughter was only in for 9 days.
Okay, so 9 days later, how was it taking her home?
It was the best, but it kind of felt like anticlimactic because I had planned, obviously, with a child in the NICU, like, there wasn't this fanfare, but I had made big brother and big sister gift bags, and I was hoping they were going to come to the hospital and get to hold her. Well, none of that happened. They didn't get to see her at all. The hospital where my middle daughter was born, my older son was able to come, but this hospital had a different policy. Even though he was like almost 8 years old, they wouldn't let him come in the NICU, so they could only open the windows. So it was anticlimactic. I felt robbed.
Yeah.
A lot of my friends, it was during the week, so there was like only 1 or 2 friends who came to visit. Family by your third kid, they don't care. It's like, so I kind of felt like, and I think some mamas may feel that way after you give birth too, that all the attention is on you because you're the one who's pregnant. And then you give birth and people come to see you in the hospital and they want nothing to do with you. They don't want to know how you feel. They just want to hold the baby, so that's kind of, the mama, don't get lost in that. You still matter. You're still important.
Yeah.
And just remember some of that can just be the hormones coming down. It's really harsh when those hormones come down.
Yeah. And mentally, how were you?
I was a mess. It was a total mess. So, taking her home, I was excited, but they put me in a wheelchair to hold her to take her out. But it felt like I was almost faking a scene, right? Like I was acting. Because I wasn't getting in a wheelchair out of the hospital holding my baby the way that other women do, right? They put me in a wheelchair so that I could hold her what I mean? I wasn't the patient being let out. Like, it just felt robbed.
Uh-huh.
It was a situation that I felt robbed from. But, you know what? Listen, again, everything happens the way that it's supposed to happen. And I was so grateful that she was coming home. And, I did get a baby nurse. I did not have to give her bottles at all. She exclusively breastfed. The other 2 actually needed to be, obviously, the little tiny one who was born the size of my hand, obviously got supplemented. But she breastfed exclusively until she was 9 months old, and I was so proud of that. She gained, she thrived. So that felt like an accomplishment, and it felt like almost like, well, I didn't take the drugs. This was a natural pregnancy. My body knew what to do. It was a third pregnancy, fourth pregnancy, but it just felt good once she was home to feel quote unquote normal, whatever that is.
Yeah. And how did breastfeeding go? Did you have any challenge?
Nope. Other than, getting mastitis here and there and a clogged, duct like everybody gets. I did not have any challenges, It was just hard because, again, every kid is different. My oldest one slept through the night at like 3 months old. My NICU baby came home from the NICU sleeping through the night, but we had to wake her up to feed her because she was so tiny. This one didn't sleep through the night until she was 9 months old. So it was really hard. And, sometimes when you have that first baby come home, you are following those rules like to a T. Yeah. She slept next to me in the bed. She slept with a blanket on her. She slept on her belly. It's just, it's different because you know what you know, right? Like she was sleeping next to me. That also made it easier because I literally for 9 months did not sleep. 9 months straight, which was hard.
Yeah.
And my boobs hurt and my nipples were just enormous. But, other than that.
Well, is there anything else you want to add?
The one thing I want to add, especially as we get older, one thing that's really important when we're planning on where we're giving birth, you have to make sure that you have a level 3 NICU because you never know what's going to happen. And I say that with love, not because you're going to need it. And, it's almost like it'll be there and you won't need it, but I think it's very important for us not to shut our eyes and pretend like things can't happen. Because let's be honest, you don't know what you don't know, what you don't know. Yeah. And had I not been at a level 3 NICU for both of these situations, I don't know. So I really do think it's important, especially as we get older, because unfortunately, complications can happen at any age. Doesn't matter. But I believe in advocating for yourself, and I believe in asking as many questions as possible. The one thing was when in my twin pregnancy again, which I consider, I would have been 40 had they made it to their due date. I was due 11/11/11, and one was born in June and one was born in July. So I would have turned 40, and given birth to my twins. So listen to your body. If you feel in your gut like something's not right, which I felt the whole time, but my doctor kept telling me I was crazy. Yeah. And you know what he said to me when I wound up in the hospital? He's like, oh, I guess you shouldn't have gone away, because I didn't want to go away. I was afraid. Yeah. And he told me, no, you can go away. They can't do anything differently than I can do for you, which was false. Honestly, and this goes for anybody at any age, but we're smarter. Ladies, we're smarter, over 35 because of our life experiences. Not to say that we're just we've had more experience. Listen to your gut. Don't let anybody, make you feel bad for asking questions. And what is best for you and your baby and your body and your family. And don't let anybody tell you anything else. Because I wouldn't be here talking to you, telling you about, my 4 blessings that I had if it weren't for that.
Yeah, I love that. And what has been your biggest challenge being pregnant in your 40s?
I mean, there's this, philosophy that, as you get older, it's harder to carry a baby. I think that's BS. Mm-hmm. I think it's total BS. I'll be honest with you, aside from the fact that I had other children at home and the stress because of what went on, this pregnancy was fine. Like, I don't see how it was any harder to have this pregnancy than any other. Like, I know that they say that it's, harder on your body, but quite frankly, that was not my experience. And it doesn't have to be yours either. Whoever is listening, that does not need to be. Do not let that limiting belief enter your head from anybody. Like I said, it really gets under my skin. Stop the madness. You just have to stop it.
Mm-hmm. That's perfect. Is there anything you'd recommend that would help prepare someone for pregnancy and birth in their 40s?
Support, the right kind of support, to be quite honest, because I think that whether you're going through, infertility to get pregnant in your 40s, or you're blessed with getting pregnant naturally, there is this shift in the medical profession, and there is a lack of support by way of emotional and sometimes medical. And that's this isn't a knock on doctors, because we need them and we love them, and, they keep us healthy and they keep us safe. But I couldn't tell you the amount of times, whether it's a natural pregnancy or fertility pregnancy, and I work with women doing both, that things are missed, right? And I just think, going back to my gut feeling to what I said before, I think that having support and someone who can bridge and help you with those questions can be invaluable, whether that is through your family, whether that is, a group of friends. I would caution you to Instagram and Facebook, because I think that there's a lot of good information out there, but I think some of it can be triggering for some also. I really encourage you to pull back who you're following on Instagram if that happens, because I think oftentimes we say, oh, well, that worked for that person and they're taking this and this and they're spending thousands of dollars. That doesn't mean it's going to work for you. Everybody's different, and you need to, come up with a plan medically and supportive that's right for you. And just remember that you're not seeing 100% of the truth of what's coming out there on Instagram either, right?
Yeah.
That's my biggest thing. Just make sure you have a tribe. You have a tribe of support. And if you need help figuring out somebody, that you seek out that person who can help you. Sometimes it could be a doctor. Sometimes it could be a therapist. Sometimes it could be a coach. Depends on what it is that you need. But just make sure that you're supported, because you matter. You matter, and you're very important in this process, and you should always remain important in this process.
And what advice would you give yourself when you were pregnant, if you could go back?
Oh, not to obsess. Oh my God. I am a type A obsessive personality, and, it's hard not to, right? It's hard not to. I think I wish I could tell myself to live in the moment more and to enjoy it, because it will go by in a flash. And I think sometimes in the early stages of pregnancy, you kind of just keep saying, I can't wait to give birth. I can't wait to be big, that you miss all those little moments. Like, it's so exciting to find out that you're pregnant, yet nerve-wracking. But then you get to the second trimester, and then you feel better, and then you're starting to get big, and you're buying all the maternity. Like, enjoy every moment. I wish I could have told myself to do that. Enjoy every moment, and keep your maternity clothes, because you never know when you're going to have another baby. Because I didn't do that.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about your coaching practice and how people can work with you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, as I said, I am a fertility coach. I work, with women who kind of fall outside that bell curve. I think that there's this misconception that when we go to our doctors, that they're going to find all, the missing pieces of the puzzle to help us get pregnant as quickly and easily as possible. And that doesn't happen all the time, especially with portals these days. It's become like you're a number, whether you're at your doctor's office or your clinic's office. So I bridge the gap between your medical team and yourself, so that we can figure out what those missing puzzle pieces are as to why you haven't got pregnant. And I can tell you that I have 100% compliancy. Anytime I've worked with somebody, I have found at least one thing that has been missing that's helped a couple move themselves closer to getting pregnant. And also, helping connect during that process, because, when you are older, it may take a little bit longer to get pregnant, or it doesn't matter what age, right? I've got somebody who's been trying naturally and has had 6 miscarriages. It's been a really long, and that's not typical, right? That's not typical. So, you need somebody, to help bridge that gap so that you can really get there. I mean, I was just working with somebody, and typically it'll take 3 cycles of IVF to get pregnant. And we were able to get her pregnant in 1 cycle and save her like almost $50,000 in that process. It's a passion of mine. It always burned in my heart, that I went through the struggle that I went through so that I could help others get there quicker and easier than I could. I have various different ways. I like to come up with a personalized program that's going to help you in your circumstances. And what makes my coaching unique is that I work with the couple together. I don't just work with the woman. I like to work with the partner as well, because I do believe that sometimes the other person, the partner, will not feel as though they can express their disappointment in the process because they're not the one going through it, or they're not the one going through treatment or miscarriage or difficulty, right? So I like to bridge that gap together, because your partner can be your biggest cheerleader or your biggest source of stress. So my coaching is very unique in that we look at the medical, the physical, and the emotional all going into the process of getting you pregnant and getting you there quicker and easier.
Caryn, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your story. It was incredible.
Thank you. And thank you so much. I'm so glad, that we connected.
And that concludes Caryn's natural surprise pregnancy at 42. What an incredible journey. On next week's show, we have Leah sharing her pregnancy story at 44. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you have a great week, and I will see you next Monday.